This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thank you for joining us. Our guest, Tim Donnelly, he is a member of the California State Assembly. He has also announced his intent to form an exploratory committee to run for governor. Congratulations on your re-election and for your interest in the highest office in California.
Thanks, Brad.
So what made you decide to look at the office of governor?
Well, for a year and a half, I've been traveling the state, and everywhere I go, people have been asking me that. You know, in the beginning, you feel very flattered, and you say, well, thank you, that's very flattering. And but after a while, I started asking, who's going to run?
Right.
Who from the conservative side is going to stand up and truly articulate our vision? Who's going to do the work on the ground to really rebuild our party?
Well, let's talk about the rebuilding of the party, because clearly the Republican Party needs to be rebuilt in California. Every single close race in the legislature, assembly, and Senate went to the Democrats. I mean, races no one expected Democrats to win. Someone like Chris Norby, a Republican in Orange County, he lost his assembly seat. 3 U.S. Congresspeople on the Republican side, Dan Lundgren lost his seat, Brian Bilbray lost his seat, Mary Bono Mack lost her seat. I mean, it was just a blowout for California Republicans.
It was a disaster. And it certainly was not foreseeable from the ground. I can tell you that. I was as surprised as anybody. But once you're there and you're doing the the forensic analysis afterwards, one thing became crystal clear, and that was that Prop 30 was sort of the secret weapon. And
let's talk about Prop 30, because I got to tell you, I did not think it would pass. It didn't look strong going in, and yet it got 55% of the vote. That's not close.
Prop 30, with Prop 38 out there,
right,
which was drawing attention to the fact that Prop 30 really, that money wasn't going to go directly to education, it was going to go to the general fund.
Right.
And so I thought for sure that would sink it. I also thought, hey, look at the economy. You start to raise taxes and you're going to wipe out jobs.
But that begs the question about your race for governor, because clearly we have an electorate in California that appears to be trending more progressive, not conservative. I mean, you look at the numbers amongst voters of color. Latinos voting 72% for President Obama. Asian Americans voting 79% for President Obama. These are all voters in California.
See, I think you can make a huge mistake. The only color that's going to matter in the 2014 gubernatorial election is green. It's going to be about whether or not you have a job.
Oh.
And so what have we done in California? We've raised the tax rate to the highest income tax in the entire nation. Business owners, and I'm talking to them every day now, they're leaving. There's a handful who've said, hey, I might stick around just to see if you can pull it out, but we're leaving, or we're moving our residents out of the state, we're taking tax revenue. So in a year, Governor Brown may be coming back to the people and saying, hey, I need more money. Who's he going to tax now? If you've already taxed the most successful people, and they have the flexibility to change their behavior and not deploy their capital, take all their marbles and go home, or move out of the state.
Here's what's interesting. I think the tax message can resonate in California, but what seemed to sink the Republicans in California and nationwide was not the tax message. It was the message on immigration.
I disagree. Immigration was not a major issue in the presidential election.
But
it was not the forefront. The forefront was taxation and jobs.
But then why are Latinos voting so overwhelmingly Democratic? Asian Americans, who voted 31% for Bill Clinton in 1992, over 70% for Barack Obama in 2012.
My theory on that is twofold, and part of it is informed by listening and doing some interviews where people called in. And we did an NPR thing on the Latino vote.
Tim Donnelly appeared on NPR. I'm very impressed.
I go everywhere. You know what was great was 80% of the callers agreed with me. And then they informed us. And one of the things they informed us of was it isn't just about, a big part of it is that the left, including the entire mainstream media, not just news shows, but all the television shows, the comedies, the sitcoms, the dramas.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
Bash and demonize Republicans, and they have done such a successful job of painting that we're the party of rich white males, and we don't care about anybody who's poor. Nothing could be further from the truth.
It's Modern Family versus Leave It to Beaver. I mean, I've heard that.
Well, I mean, you could say that, and it was interesting. I did an interview, and when I was finished, the cameraman came up to me and he said, "Look, I'm an immigrant from Romania. I fled communism, and I see communism coming here to the United States." And he's trying to sound the alarm. He said, "Thank you for at least standing up and fighting for this."
But at the same time, there's a tremendous frustration amongst both Democrats and Republicans about immigration issues. And when you look at polling, I mean, the country is moving toward more liberal immigration laws. Voters are supporting Obama's deferred action on the DREAM Act. Voters, they still do want increased border enforcement, but they're a bit nervous about Arizona SB 1070. I mean,
clearly, there's a dilemma. I mean, conservatives look out there and say, we believe in the rule of law. At the same time, we have human beings in front of us, many of whom were brought here as children. So do we feel something for them? Do we say, wow, I really understand the plight. I understand why you came here. I mean, you could make a case in many instances, especially with our closest neighbor and biggest trading partner, Mexico, that many of these people are economic refugees or they're refugees from a drug war. And so we have to have some compassion and we have to have some understanding of that. At the same time, we have to look at what the implications are. What precedent are you setting? What is the future going to be? And of course, you know, because you're interviewing me, everybody always brings up immigration as if that's the only issue.
I know.
Immigration is, just recently a study was done, $10 billion for the entitlements. So when you raise taxes, part of that is to pay for the entitlements for illegal immigration, but it's also to pay for high-speed rail. It's also to pay for this cap-and-trade idea that's going to make California less competitive.
And what's ironic is you're running for governor, and yet you would have really virtually no power over the immigration issue. I mean, the U.S. Supreme Court basically slapped down Arizona on their attempts.
And one of the reasons I think people will support me is because I'm willing to at least talk about it. I'm not afraid. I'm not going to hide. Hey, you're welcome to disagree with me. But you can't deny that this is a huge issue that has not been resolved by either party. And now that the Republicans are saying, oh, we're just going to do an amnesty and then all the Latinos will vote for us. I don't think so. What I do think is we need to go into the Latino community. We need to meet with leaders. We need to meet with business owners. And we need to do a lot of listening and find out. And I believe from the people that I've met so far, and I've been doing this, is the issues are largely the same. It's family. It's about having a job so you can provide for your family. It's about your kids' future.
There's no doubt that
it's about having a safe community, right. and the border does intersect that when we have cartels down there and we have gang members and we have 12-year-old girls who are sold on the streets.
How do you get?
So they are just like every other American. And I think we ought to treat them that way rather than have a different message because they have a Hispanic surname.
Right, but how do you get around, for example, pictures of Tim Donnelly at the border?
I'm not ashamed of being at the border. You know why I went to the border? I stood up against tyranny. I stood up against this horrific tragedy, this atrocity. There are 60,000 human beings who were killed in the drug cartel war while both governments did absolutely nothing.
Can California do something?
California can do something. We could put the National Guard down there. We could cut off the magnets so that people are not caught in that crossfire coming here for a better life.
As governor, would you send the National Guard to the border? The California National Guard?
I would not rule out any option to do that which is right to protect human life. That is one of the absolute core concepts. That is one of the core duties of government, is protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So as we conclude, what will you be doing over the next 2 years to get your message out? How do you speak to 58 counties, 37 million people?
Well, first of all, we're going to get in an RV.
Okay.
And we're going to drive around.
I want to be in that RV.
Well, you're welcome to come out and spend some time with us. But you know what I think is important? And one of the big failures of gubernatorial campaigns, they start at 50,000 feet with tons of money. They don't listen. Californians have great ideas. I think together we can fix this state. So we're going to ask people to give us their input.
Okay. His name is Tim Donnelly, member of the California State Assembly. He is an intended candidate for governor of California. I'm Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition. This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, Bob Dutton, he recently left the California State Senate as a result of term limits. He was the Republican leader in the California State Senate from 2010-2012. Sir, we congratulate you on a very successful tenure. And I say that especially since you are a Republican and you were dominated by Democrats the entire time you were there. But I thought we'd look back at your 10 years, 2 years in the Assembly, 8 in the Senate. You had some real successes.
Yeah, I thank you for that, Brad. But I actually do feel there was some successes, and I think a lot of it has to do with how you go into office. And I went into the office with the idea that I could make a difference, and I started looking for things that I could get involved in that would help solve problems at the local level. Now, I've always been very active at the local level, especially with my local Chamber of Commerce. Small business advocate is what I went up there for.
I think you were being a little humble because, you know, a lot of people can say a lot of things about Bob Dutton, but even Democrats like you. You know, they want to have a beer with you. And so on some very significant issues, I want to talk about two, if I may, because you crossed the aisle on two issues that no one thought could get resolved, and that would be the Amazon tax.
That's true.
And the Americans with Disabilities Act, most recently. I mean, it was stunning in its breadth. So let's talk about how those worked and how you were able to do it.
Well, I think it's just a matter of keeping your eyes and ears open, but just being in the right place at the right time.
Again, you're being humble. No, but you worked it. I mean, you...
Well, but first you got to put yourself in the position of being able to be receptive, and that's what kind of happened when the Amazon people were in Sacramento. I just happened to be walking by the hotel when their lobbyist grabbed me to see if I would be willing to sit down and talk to them, and I said, of course I would. And so we got to talking, and I felt there was an opportunity that we could avoid a messy referendum on a bill we had just passed on internet sales. And during my conversation with them, I discovered that they were also looking to put fulfillment centers here to California, and this would be all part of the situation if we could work out some kind of compromise.
And when we talk about where those fulfillment centers are, one is in San Bernardino County.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say they need those jobs desperately.
Well, and that's what I suggested to them. Now, what I've always done, as far as I've always tried to figure out a way to draw interest to our area. And because we have some of the highest unemployment, but because I also know that we are ideally suited for logistics, industry and movement and warehousing. I knew we had, and we also had the Norton Air Force Base, which is now San Bernardino Airport, which was set up already having the infrastructure in place. I knew we had a good shot if they would just, I just needed to get them to the door, and then it was up to the local people to sell them.
They did it.
But I'll tell you, on that deal there, I walked into the basement. I was getting ready to leave. Daryl Steinberg parks right next to me.
The Democratic leader?
The Democratic leader. And I told Daryl about my meeting with Amazon. Are you interested in trying to work out a compromise? Daryl says, heck yeah, I'm tired of lawsuits and everything. Let's see if so. And I said, okay, I tell you what, I'll work with them. I'll get together with all the big box retailers and see if there's a compromise there. If there is, I'll get together. I'll let you know, and then we can proceed from there. That's what we did. John Perez got involved in it as well.
Democrat.
Speaker. And this whole thing got put together, and then the governor all of a sudden had something he could sign that was a compromise, good for everybody. Bipartisan solution, support and everything else. And it was a good example of what can be done when you put politics off to the side and you just say, here's a problem we have, how do we best resolve this to everybody's betterment?
Another example would be the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Absolutely, it was a similar situation.
Where businesses were really hurting because they were being served with drive-by lawsuits for ticky-tack violations. They had no intent to deny the disabled access. But yet you moved forward and got a bipartisan solution.
And that one there was also kind of the way it got started. It was actually 2 years in the making, but my first attempt got totally rejected. But I started taking the approach to remind people that these businesses that were being victimized are both owned by Democrats and Republicans. It wasn't a partisan issue. And so then all of a sudden, to my surprise, Dianne Feinstein got involved. She sent a letter of support on my second bill
the U.S.
to do
Senator,
this issue.
A Democrat.
And I got to tell you, when Dianne talks, they have a tendency to listen in Sacramento. And so Daryl Steinberg again said, Bob,
let's do it.
Would you be willing to work on this together? I said, Daryl, if you really are serious about solving the problem. And we had 4 months of meetings with all the stakeholders involved. End result was at the end of session this last year, We actually came again with a bill with a good bipartisan support that actually has been credited with really solving some serious problems with regards to our small business community.
Let's look forward and talk about bipartisanship in Sacramento, which won't be needed. It will not be needed because the Democrats they ran the table in this recent election.
That's true.
Every close race in the Assembly and the Senate went Democratic.
Right.
For the first time in a generation, the Democrats have a 2/3 majority in both the Assembly and the Senate. No one saw that coming. As a Republican leader, you got to be shell-shocked by this. And as the Republican Party looks forward, where do they go in the state of California? Forget nationally, in California, where do they go?
I think what they need to do, and I think you'll see a major attempt in this area, the more moderate members, both Democrats and Republicans, are going to come together and try to solve problems. Once again, focus on the problem, and how do we solve the problem? Forget about the politics. Let's go park the donkey and the elephant in the barn for a while.
One would
and
hope.
let's go. We got a failing economy right now here in California. It's having a major effect on the nation as well. We're too big of a player. They've got to get people back to work. Small business community is the key, and I think we're going to see an attempt on the part of some of the more moderate members, more business-friendly, small business members of the legislature. At least that'll be my hope, and that's the direction I would go.
And I would presume that. But if you look at the future, the electoral future of the party, I mean, the numbers are daunting. President Obama in California carried Latinos by over 70%. Some polls have Asians voting close to 80% for Obama. Asian Americans were they were the bread and butter of Republican votes in the 80s and 90s. Younger voters, over 70% supporting Barack Obama. I mean, frankly, it's ugly. I mean, this is ugly for the Republican Party.
Well, what the Republicans need to do is kind of what we tried to do when I was leader. We didn't just say no to Jerry Brown. What we said to Governor Brown was, here are the reforms that you need to put into effect to fix problems here in California.
You got pension reform.
That's right. And you also, at that turn, yes, if you want to make your case for your ballot, for your taxes, we'll go ahead, and there was members that would vote for that to put it on the ballot. But you're going to have to do these reforms first, and we need to put them on the ballot too, so we can actually change the way we're doing business. So you come up with you aren't coming up with a no, you're coming up with a no, but here's how you can fix this. Here's the workout plan that you're going to need in order to bring California back to where it needs to be. See, the people that voted this last go around, they only saw a lot of hardship coming out of Republicans.
You know what else they saw, though? They saw national leaders talking about how if a woman is impregnated by a rape, it's God's will.
Absolutely.
And if a woman is raped, they may not get pregnant because they could shut their body down. I mean, that is a noose on the neck of the California Republican Party.
Well, and that's the reason why more common sense oriented Republicans, I think, and that's where it really comes down to. You have to be more practical. And
but how does the CRP or Republicans of California get out from under the noise in the middle of the country and on the East Coast? Because it's really a noose.
Yeah, well, I think what they need to do is they need to redefine what they truly mean by conservative principles, because conservative principles don't necessarily mean that you're anti this or anti that. It means you're pro this, you're pro that, and I think that's what you have to do. Too often the Republican Party, especially here in California, has taken more of a glasses half empty approach instead of a glasses half full. I always try to work on the half full, and because the Republicans to me have always been the party of promise. They have been the party that has been taking the lead in civil rights. They have taken the lead in actually establishing a middle class so that you can actually see people be able to help better themselves. And what's happened is the Democrats have been successful in taking that away from us. And so we need to get back to our basics.
I have a feeling that we have not seen the last of Bob Dutton. He has been a remarkable civil servant and leader in Sacramento. He just left the California State Senate. My name is Brad Pomerance. This is California Edition. The This is California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Larry Ward. He's the assessor for Riverside County and served from 2000 to 2007. This county saw double-digit growth in assessed value, total assessed value. Then we hit 2009 and you see a drop of almost 11%. These have been very tough times. How have we done over the last year or so, though?
Actually, the last year I think we bottomed out. We've started to see slight increases in certain areas of Riverside County. I think the worst is over, but keep your fingers crossed.
You really think the worst is over?
I hope so.
And I think you're probably right, because I'm looking at the figures, and like I said, 2009, you had a 10.5% drop in assessed value. In the calendar year 2012, 0.15%. That's essentially flat.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's happened? What have you seen happen from 2009 until today?
You know, I think there's a combination of factors. We have seen a reduction in foreclosures, notice of filings for foreclosures, trustee sales.
And why have we seen that? Has it been that the economy is turning around? Has it been California passed the Homeowners Bill of Rights in July? What is causing this decrease in foreclosures?
Kind of a combination of the above. I think the Homeowners Bill of Rights that were passed gave homeowners additional protection, put additional requirements on lenders before they could foreclose. Mm-hmm. We're also seeing a spike in things like short sales and so on. So,
is that a good thing?
Yes. Yes.
Why?
Well, I think because people are able to get out of a foreclosure is going to leave a number of negatives on someone's credit and so on, where a short sale, not as much. So
now let's talk about value of homes, though, because we see the assessed value is flat, but I don't know that that necessarily means that home values are flat or rising. What are you seeing in terms of home values?
What we're seeing year over year, for example, October to October, we're seeing increases of 10 to 15%.
In Riverside County?
In Riverside County, yes.
That's stunning.
Yes.
In so many ways, because Riverside County, San Bernardino County, the Inland Empire, that was really ground zero for the bottom falling out. I mean, I remember last year, I think it was, there was an extended article in the Los Angeles Times that talked about Hesperia, which is actually in San Bernardino County, I believe. But it's still, it's a tale. And in that community, they saw values drop 60, 70% over 5 years. And every third, fourth home was in foreclosure.
Yes.
So are we seeing these increase in values throughout the Inland Empire? Is San Bernardino gaining as well, if you know?
The numbers I see indicate that it's generally across both counties. I do think that you know, it's tenuous. It's a long, slow process to get back to a normalized market, but we're going in the right direction, and that's a good thing.
I do want to ask you about the flip side of the mortgage industry. Foreclosures are slowing down, but I know that it can be very difficult to get a loan these days. It's as if the pendulum has flown the exact opposite way to an extreme, that people with good credit, it will take months for them to get approved for a loan. They've never defaulted on a mortgage, never had a late payment, but yet the banks are so nervous. So is that clogging up the market?
I think so. I think if you talk to real estate folks, they're having trouble sometimes getting the appraisal back that they want. For sure, the getting a loan is much more difficult than it was in years past. But again, I think some of that is starting to even out.
Now, I know that you are in Riverside County, not San Bernardino County, but I must ask you about a plan that's been floated in San Bernardino County, and I'm sure you know where I'm going. Yeah. And that plan is that the county would take mortgages by eminent domain, and as a result, it would be an attempt to stem the foreclosure crisis that may or may not be waning. What do you think about that, to the extent you'd like to comment?
I don't think it'll happen in Riverside County.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. But do you at least give them credit for thinking outside of the box? Or is it just a harebrained idea? I mean, look, there have been plenty of people, and I'll say this, that have called it an absolute harebrained idea, that it would cause panic in the mortgage market because there would be no predictability. And if all of a sudden a county could foreclose or take a mortgage by eminent domain, it would really clog up the market.
A couple quick comments.
Please.
I think some of the federal programs that they have just don't work in the Inland Empire because we are so upside down in the market. So I think it took for out-of-the-box solutions. I don't necessarily agree with that out-of-the-box solution.
Okay, fair enough.
But it, you know, that's the case. I think they're looking for options for homeowners to keep their properties.
Fair enough. Okay, I must ask you about Proposition 13. Some call it the third rail of politics in California. We know that Proposition 13 is loved and hated. It stemmed the tide of increasing property taxes, but it also, devastated many programs, including education. That's just kind of a neutral observation. The reason I ask you is, as you know, the Democratic Party has taken a 2/3 majority in both the Senate and the Assembly. And as a result, they have a lot of power. And if they wanted to reform Proposition 13, they could. Arguably. Well, they probably have to send it to the voters for approval, but they could at least get it on the ballot, when before they couldn't get things on the ballot. What do you make of this, at least discussion about the revision of Proposition 13?
I think those talks have been going on for some time.
Right.
When I get out and talk to homeowners, when I talk to real estate folks and so on, Prop 13 holds a special place in most people's hearts, and I would be very, very surprised if it would go away. There has been talk about maybe trying to divide commercial, so
right.
that commercial would
Split
be
roles.
something different.
Well, what do you think about split roles?
From an assessor perspective, it would be really, really tough.
In terms of the logistics of it.
Yes.
But I do want to ask you about Prop 13. I'll just take my case, for example. I'll talk about me personally. I buy my home in 1999. It was a good time to buy. My property taxes are fairly stable, or they are stable because of Prop 13. Now I'm thinking maybe I want to move. Even though the market has taken a hit, I live in Los Angeles County. I have some equity in my home. And so if I wanted to move, the price would really jump. Wow. And as a result, it's the property tax hit that is so dramatic that makes it very difficult for me to move. If there was a slow float of my property taxes up, it wouldn't be as dramatic. I don't know that I want to pay more taxes, but you see where I'm going. I mean, property tax plays a pivotal role in whether people can move or not. And I don't feel like it should be such an important factor.
Well, the only thing I can tell you is that, it's gone, that inequity issue and so on has gone to the state Supreme Court, and it's been upheld. So I'm a proponent of Prop 13. I think most assessors are, and I would be surprised that if it would be substantially changed from what it is now.
Why, though, at the same time, and I'm just playing it out, should someone who happened to have owned their home before 1978 be advantaged vis-a-vis Prop 13, whereas I didn't own my home then, and so, I don't get that advantage?
That's Prop 13, and I understand the issues, but Prop 13 that's the way it is.
So if you had to look into a crystal ball, what do you think happens with Prop 13? I mean, there is no doubt that the state is looking for some form of tax reform. We've heard discussions, I know this is not your area, about taxing services, but therefore reducing sales tax overall, but including services in there. We've talked about split rolls. I mean, is it time for us to really look at our taxing structure, which would impact assessors throughout the state?
Well, I've read a number of articles where they have good reason why Prop 13 should be looked at, maybe a split roll. But if you look at, California is already considered to be one of the worst business-friendly states.
I've heard that.
And you add an additional tax increment through property tax, I think there'd be it'd be a tough battle.
So where do we go from here? I mean, counties need more revenue. Prop 13 changed that funding formula. You're, one of the chief, I wouldn't say financial officer, but you're someone who's dealing with money every day in a large county. Where do counties go then?
Well, I do think that we're starting to see a turnaround. I don't think we'll see the 22% increases or 18% increases, but I think a reasonable 5 to 6% increase in assessed value from year to year is very possible in California.
Okay, his name is Larry Ward. He is the assessor for Riverside County. My name is Brad Pomerance. We thank you so much for watching California Edition.